My son once told me, "Mom, we wouldn't have made it without you." That was a long time ago, back when his voice still carried warmth, and I still believed love was a kind of memory no one could erase. But lately, I've come to learn something harder. Some children don't forget. They just rewrite the story, without the woman who held the pen first. And so, this is mine. A revenge story, but not the kind you think. There's no yelling, no breaking dishes, just a quiet woman. A house she built with her bare hands, and a lock that only turns one way now. It started with the garden, not the trip, not the suitcase wheels squeaking across the hallway, not even the family vacation photos I'd scroll past in silence later. No, for me, it started the day I found the lavender bush cut down, without a word, without asking. I'd planted it right after Harold died. My husband, gone too soon from that steel mill accident. I remember putting my hands in the dirt, trying to feel something that wasn't grief, that lavender. It wasn't just a plant. It was the first thing I cared for again after losing the one person who saw me. And one morning, it was gone. When I asked Kevin, my son, he shrugged. "Lisa thought it looked messy," he said, eyes still on his phone. "We're redoing the front yard anyway, gonna list it on Airbnb next summer." I just stood there, not mad, not confused, just still. He didn't look up. He just walked past me, talking about mulch like I was the neighbor who watered plants too close to the fence line. That was the first time I realized something had shifted. Not in the house, not in them, in me. I used to believe that raising a child meant they'd always carry you with them, like the smell of old books or the sound of your lullabies. Kevin was my whole life for a long time. After Harold passed, I worked extra shifts at the hospital. I missed birthdays, I ate cold dinner in the break room, I bought used shoes from Goodwill just so he could wear name brand ones. And I didn't mind. I did it because that's what you do when you love someone more than you love your own rest. When he got into college, I sold my wedding ring to help pay for books. When he and Lisa got married, I offered the house. Not a rental, not pay what you can. I said, "Move in. Make this your home too." Because that's what family is supposed to do. Build from what the generation before made possible. I didn't see it then. But looking back, that was the moment I started fading. It was small at first. Lisa rearranged the living room without asking. Kevin brought home new kitchenware and boxed mine up. Called it outdated. Eli, my grandson, was told not to wake Grandma too early, even though I'd been waking up at 5:30 for the past 40 years. They stopped asking what I wanted for dinner, stopped telling me when they'd be home, stopped calling it my house. It became our house, then their house, and somewhere in between, I disappeared. Still, I stayed. I made breakfast every morning. I folded the laundry even when they left it damp in the washer. I kept the pantry stocked. I baked muffins with Eli on Sundays. Not because I was expected to, but because I wanted to belong. I thought, if I just keep giving, maybe one day they'll see me again. One afternoon, I heard Kevin on the phone in the backyard. He thought I was upstairs. He laughed and said, "It's just easier with her around. Free babysitting, free house. I mean, she's harmless." Harmless. Like I was a stray cat they let sleep on the porch out of pity. I sat in my bedroom, knees to chest, and listened through the thin window glass. I didn't cry. I just started hearing every silence differently. A week later, Lisa suggested I take some time off during their family vacation. "You'll have the house all to yourself," she smiled. Kevin didn't say anything. He just tapped his phone like the conversation was already over. And that's when I knew this wasn't a home. It was a museum. And I was the dusty exhibit no one wanted to tour. That night, I went down to the basement and opened the old chest I hadn't touched in years. Inside were photos, Kevin's baby pictures, Harold's old cufflinks, and the original deed to the house. My hands trembled as I pulled it out. Still my name. Still sharp black ink. Dorothy Elaine McAdams. Sole owner. I ran my fingers across it like a scar I'd forgotten was there. They'd built a life on a foundation I poured, and never once asked if I wanted to stay in the house I built. But I did stay. I stayed through the erasure. I stayed through the silence. I stayed through the small humiliations that come dressed as politeness. Because I loved them. Because I believed they were just busy, just distracted, just going through a phase. But that belief was cracking. And when it broke, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I simply stood up, walked to the front door, and looked at the lavender bush that wasn't there anymore. That's when I realized they hadn't just trimmed the garden. They had uprooted me. And I was done growing where I wasn't wanted. They didn't say goodbye. That's the part that caught me off guard more than anything. The silence. No wave from Kevin. No, "See you soon, Mom." Just suitcase wheels clacking against tile, the front door swinging shut, and the car engine turning over like it had done it 100 times before. Like leaving me behind was routine. Earlier that morning, I was standing at the sink pouring orange juice when I heard my grandson's voice, soft, cautious. "Grandma doesn't know, right?" I froze. The carton tilted, juice rising too fast in the glass. My hand tightened around the handle, but I didn't move. His voice was followed by Kevin's, quiet, firm, dismissive. "She's not coming. It's already decided." I didn't even hear my name. I didn't need to. There was a pause, then the whisper of Lisa's voice, sharp as a pin. "Don't bring it up again. We've been over this." I stood there for a while after that, staring out the window above the sink. The garden looked different in the early morning light. Emptier maybe, or maybe that was just me. Later that night, I tried to ask without asking. We were all sitting at the dinner table. Kevin had his phone in one hand, fork in the other. Lisa was scrolling something on her tablet, probably Airbnb listings. Eli was playing with the mashed potatoes. I cleared my throat and said, as casually as I could, "So, when do you all head out?" Kevin didn't look at me. Lisa thought maybe this year it'd be nice if it was just, the four of us, a little less stressful. He said it like he was talking about the weather, like it was a reasonable thing to exclude someone from a family trip because they made things less peaceful. I nodded, even smiled. I think that's the part that breaks me now. I smiled like I understood. I didn't ask who booked it. I didn't ask where they were going. I didn't ask if they'd packed sunscreen for Eli's sensitive skin like I always reminded them. I just sat there, back straight, and let the moment pass. Because that's what you do when you've been taught that quiet women are easier to live with. Later that night, I sat in the living room alone. The family photo on the wall stared back at me. It was from the last beach trip. Kevin had his arm around Lisa. Eli was holding a sand bucket. I had taken the picture. No one had asked me to be in it. When I tell you I didn't cry, it's not because it didn't hurt. It's because the hurt had become something dry, something used up, like a scab that never healed right and just started blending into your skin. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed listening to their voices in the hallway. Lisa snapping at Eli to fold faster, Kevin asking where the passports were. The shuffle of clothes being packed, drawers slamming, the zip of luggage. They moved around the house like I didn't exist, like I was a live-in maid who just happened to come with the property. The next morning, Lisa gave me a tight, chirpy smile. "Thanks for watching the house," she said, wheeling her suitcase past me like she was doing me a favor. Kevin didn't even look back. Eli waved from the back seat of the SUV, but it was a half-hearted wave, like someone told him to. I waved back anyway. Then I closed the door, locked it behind me, and stood there in the silence. The kind of silence that doesn't settle. It hovers, like a question no one wants to answer. That day, I walked around the house like I was seeing it for the first time. Their shoes by the door. Lisa's live, laugh, love signs in the hallway. The sticky fingerprints on the fridge. The crooked curtain rods Kevin never fixed. I touched everything. Not out of nostalgia, but because I felt like a ghost trying to remember how to feel solid again. I know a lot of you watching might understand this feeling, the strange ache of being present in a house where your presence no longer matters. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been left behind not because you were forgotten, but because they remembered too well how much you gave, and that made them uncomfortable? If you felt that, tell me about it in the comments. I'm listening. because I know how lonely it feels to be erased in your own home. By sunset, the silence had grown so loud I couldn't bear it. I opened all the windows, let the breeze sweep through the living room. I made myself a cup of tea, chamomile, the kind Lisa said smelled old. I sat on the couch, pulled the throw blanket over my legs, and stared at the front door like I dared it to open. It didn't. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel afraid of the quiet. I felt done with hoping someone would fill it. That night, I walked into the guest room, my room, and pulled the box from the top shelf of the closet. Inside was the original house deed, folded carefully, yellowing at the edges. Still my name, still my house, still the proof that I existed. They may have left without goodbye, but I had something stronger than farewell. I had ownership. I stood in the middle of the hallway, the empty house stretching out around me, and I said something out loud, not loud enough for anyone else, but enough for the walls to remember. I built this. I cleaned every floor. I patched every hole. I paid every bill. I gave everything. And now I'm done. There's a kind of silence that doesn't soothe. It scrapes. The house was quiet, yes, but not peaceful. It felt like a room just after someone slams the door. Air still shifting, walls still listening. They'd been gone less than 24 hours, and already the house sounded different. No footsteps overhead, no cartoons blaring from the living room, no Lisa yelling about chargers or snacks or someone forgetting to pack toothpaste. Just me, and the soft hum of the refrigerator, and the quiet thud of my own breath. I walked from room to room like I was searching for something, but I didn't know what. Maybe evidence that I still lived here. Maybe proof I hadn't imagined everything. The living room was half empty, as if they'd taken only what mattered and left the rest to rot. I passed Kevin and Lisa's bedroom. The door was open, the bed half made, a bottle of perfume still sitting on the dresser. I shut it gently. I didn't want to see their things anymore. Not because I was angry, but because they reminded me how little I belonged in this place now. In the hallway closet, I found the folder I'd nearly forgotten existed. Thick, yellowed, crinkled at the edges. Heavy in a way that had nothing to do with paper. Inside, the deed, the tax receipts, the maintenance logs, my name, my signature, my history. Proof that this house didn't appear out of nowhere. It had a maker. It had a keeper. It had me. But what shook me most wasn't that they forgot that. It was that they knew and decided to act like I didn't matter anyway. I made a sandwich around noon and ate it alone at the kitchen table. No one there to ask why I wasn't using a plate. No commentary about my old lady mustard. Just me, the mustard, and the memory of being somebody important. I stared at the chalkboard Lisa had hung in the kitchen, the one that read, "Family means no one gets left behind." I took it down and dropped it in the trash without a word. It didn't belong here. Not anymore. Later that day, I opened the laptop Kevin had left behind on the counter. I didn't mean to snoop, but something about the way they left, so final, so comfortable with cutting me out, itched at my ribs. Like maybe there was something more they weren't saying. The screen flickered on. No password. He never thought I'd have a reason to open it. Inside the downloads folder was a PDF, recently opened. Subject, power of attorney transfer plus title discussion. My eyes scanned faster than my brain could keep up. Emails between Kevin, Lisa, and a lawyer, sent just 3 weeks earlier. We'd like to move the house title into Lisa's name before spring. Our long-term plan includes relocating out of state, but we need clarity on how to process the change since my mother technically still resides here. I kept reading, and each line hurt worse than the last. We've started speaking with 2 senior care facilities. The private one on Monroe has availability this summer. She hasn't agreed yet, but we're planning to transition gradually, once legal matters are in place. There it was, the unseen loss. Not a rejection, not a yelling match, not even an argument, but a quiet, calculated deletion. A plan to remove me from my own home. Not violently, but legally. Like I was a broken appliance. or an outdated chair, something they could relocate once the paperwork cleared. I sat at the kitchen table with that laptop open, hands trembling, not with rage, but with the cold understanding that I had been slowly written out, not forgotten, not neglected, erased. And the worst part? They were going to smile through the whole thing. They were going to keep calling it what's best for everyone. Keep pretending they were helping me while quietly moving me into a facility with bright walls and plastic flowers and no place for my teacups or silence. I closed the laptop, not slowly, not gently. I pressed the lid down like I was burying something. And maybe I was. Maybe it was the last thread of hope I had that Kevin still saw me as his mother, not an obligation, not a transaction. That night, I walked into the guest room, the one Lisa had slowly turned into her walk-in closet. Mirrors, clothing racks, boxes of shoes I'd never seen her wear. I stood in the center of the room and turned a slow circle. Everything smelled like perfume I didn't buy. Everything looked like a place I didn't belong. And then I saw it. A plastic file folder tucked beneath a pile of winter scarves. I pulled it out with shaking hands. Inside, real estate listings. Emails with a realtor named Shannon, a timeline labeled April full title transfer, a note scribbled at the bottom, once in Lisa's name, move fast, keep mom calm through summer. I sank down on the bed. The room didn't even smell like me anymore, nothing did. Have you ever found something that confirmed your worst fear? Not because you were paranoid, but because you were finally seeing clearly? If you have, you're not alone. Not even a little bit. Leave a comment and tell me what moment finally made you stop doubting yourself. Sometimes just writing it down helps make it real. That night I didn't sleep. I didn't even get in bed. I sat in the living room with a blanket over my legs and the folder in my lap. The house creaked around me like it had something to say, like it wanted to apologize. But houses don't owe apologies. People do. Around 2 a.m., I got up and went to the laundry room. Behind the old mop bucket and broom handle, there was a locked cabinet my husband used to keep tools in. I still had the key. Inside was a fireproof box. I opened it, placed the deed inside, taped the folder shut, and slid everything into the back behind the paint cans. I didn't know what I'd do next, but I knew what I wouldn't do anymore. I wouldn't wait to be told what's happening. I wouldn't sit quietly while they planned my exit like I was a forgotten bag at the airport. The real loss wasn't the house. It wasn't the trip. It wasn't even the lies. It was watching the people you gave everything to look at you like you were already gone and realizing they hadn't lost you. They'd let you go a long time ago. I didn't eat breakfast the next morning, not because I wasn't hungry, but because I couldn't bring myself to move the same way through a house that no longer felt like it saw me. I sat at the kitchen table, hands folded, eyes fixed on the window where the sun poured in, and for the first time it hit me. I was still here. They were the ones who had left. They went off to find peace, to create some sanitized version of family life, one that didn't include the woman who paid for the walls around them. That thought didn't come with anger. It came with something quieter, something deeper, something that said, you don't need to prove anything anymore. Because here's what I finally understood. I wasn't inconvenient. I was inconvenient to their lie. For years, I believed if I kept giving, they'd eventually see me. I thought if I made dinner, folded laundry, tucked my grandson into bed with the same lullaby I used to sing Kevin, someone would eventually say, thank you for holding us together. But gratitude never came. Not because they forgot, but because it was easier for them to pretend I hadn't done anything at all. They weren't just erasing me from the house. They were rewriting the whole story of how they got here. Lisa and Kevin wanted a clean narrative, one where the house magically appeared, where family began the day they got married, where there were no wrinkles, no aging mother, no memory of anything before them. I opened the drawer by the fridge, the one Lisa used for menus and coupons, and found a stack of real estate flyers, the kind with shiny kitchens and quotes like, where new beginnings feel like home. I laughed. Short, sharp, almost bitter. There was no room in those kitchens for someone like me, not because I didn't belong, but because I reminded them that they didn't build it all alone. I picked up the phone, called the number at the bottom of one of the flyers. "McAdams residence," I said, voice calm. "May I speak to Shannon?" The realtor sounded surprised, but polite. "Yes, of course. How can I help?" I smiled, slow and sure. "I'd like to inform you that the property in question is not available for sale. It is not co-owned. It is not under review. It is mine. Legally, financially, historically." I paused. And emotionally, too. "So I suggest you update your records before I contact the board." She stammered, apologized, said she'd remove the inquiry immediately. I didn't yell, didn't gloat, just said, "Good," and hung up the phone. That was the first time in a long time I felt taller than my reflection. I spent the rest of the afternoon walking through each room, not cleaning, not fixing, just looking. Touching the walls I'd painted myself in '89, running my hand over the banister Kevin used to slide down, opening the linen closet where I still kept the quilt his grandmother made. This wasn't just a house, it was a history, and it didn't need to be defended anymore. It just needed to be remembered. I took the deed from the fireproof box, laid it on the dining table, sat across from it like it was an old friend, and I whispered, "I see you now." That night, I poured myself a glass of red wine, Harold's favorite, turned on the porch light, and sat outside in the cool air, just breathing. I didn't plan anything dramatic, no ultimatums, no confrontations. I just let the truth settle inside me like something finally clicking into place. They weren't coming back to a version of me who stayed small and useful. If they came back at all, they'd be coming back to a woman who remembered who she was before she got tired of waiting to be thanked. I stayed out there until the porch light flickered off. Not broken, just on a timer. But even that felt poetic, like a reminder that everything had its time, even patience. The next morning, I brewed a pot of real coffee, the kind Lisa said was too bold, and drank it from the mug with a chip on the rim, the one Kevin made in 5th grade. I sat at the table with the folder of paperwork beside me. Tax forms, title deeds, health records, bank receipts, every single thing they forgot I carried. By noon, I'd scanned every document into a digital folder and uploaded it to my cloud drive. Labeled everything, created backups, sent copies to my lawyer, not out of spite, out of clarity. Let them try. Let them explain to their attorney why they assumed I'd quietly disappear. Let them learn that women like me don't go quietly. We just choose when to speak. And when we do, the words are backed by paper, memory, and decades of sacrifice. I didn't feel bitter, I felt clean, like someone had finally opened the windows in my soul. There's a moment when a woman stops begging to be loved and starts building a life around the truth instead. That was my moment. I didn't announce it, didn't call Doris, didn't write it in a diary. I just stood in the middle of the hallway, barefoot, hair uncombed, coffee in hand, and whispered to the empty house, "I don't belong to them. They belong to me, and they forgot that." The first thing I did was change the locks, not because I was scared, but because I was finally done leaving the door open for people who didn't knock. The young man at the hardware store offered to help install them. I smiled and said, "Son, I've been fixing things longer than you've been alive." He laughed, but I didn't, because I wasn't joking. By sunset, every key they had was useless. I dropped the old locks into a paper bag, tied it tight, and tossed it into the outside bin. Done. No ceremony, no rage. Just one quiet action that said, "You don't get to walk through here like I never mattered." The next morning, I pulled out a trash bag and started cleaning the house, not scrubbing floors or wiping windows. No, this was a different kind of cleaning. I pulled down the wall art Lisa had hung, the cheap wooden signs that said "Good vibes only" and "Love lives here." I tossed them in the bag with the bath mat that always smelled faintly like wine she never cleaned up. I took the photo off the hallway wall, the one where I was squished on the far end like I'd been photoshopped in. I pried the frame open, slid the photo out, and folded it in half. Then I replaced it. A picture from 1989. Kevin, age 6, missing his 2 front teeth, Harold, sunburned and laughing, and me, smack in the middle, hands on both their shoulders holding everything together. That photo didn't just belong there. It always had. The guest room used to be mine. Lisa slowly turned it into her dressing room. Shelves of shoes, a full-length mirror, baskets labeled spa night and winter scarves. I cleared them out one by one. Didn't rush, didn't break anything. I just opened the closet, filled boxes, and dragged them into the garage like someone emptying a storage unit they never signed up to keep. With every drawer I emptied, every perfume bottle I packed, the house breathed a little easier. It was like peeling off wallpaper to find the original paint underneath, like the walls had been waiting for me to come home to them. Around lunchtime, I made myself a grilled cheese, used real butter, cut it diagonally the way Harold used to like, sat in the living room, feet up on the coffee table, no coaster in sight. For the first time in years, I wasn't tiptoeing. Later that day, I texted Doris, "Wine tonight?" She replied with a laughing emoji and a fast hell yes. She came by around 5, holding a bottle of Cabernet and a bag of crackers. The second she stepped inside, she stopped. "You cleaned house," she said, eyes wide. Literally. I handed her a glass. I reclaimed it. We sat on the back porch where Eli used to kick soccer balls and Lisa used to say my plants were too messy. I told her everything. The trip, the emails, the silence, the locks. She didn't interrupt. She just nodded, sipping slowly, like she'd been waiting for me to tell this story for years. Finally, she said, "You snapped." I shook my head. "No, I stopped swallowing it." After she left, I washed the glasses, wiped the counters, and stood in the middle of the kitchen, barefoot in my old robe, hair tied back. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt still, like something inside me had stopped running in circles, like I'd finally stopped waiting to be chosen. The next morning, I didn't check my phone. Didn't wonder if they were calling. Didn't peek out the window to see if the car had returned. I brewed a pot of coffee, toasted an English muffin, and sat by the kitchen window. Outside, the wind rustled the oak tree. Inside, everything was still. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't hoping that I'd suffer. I wasn't even counting the days until they came crawling back. I was just finally remembering how to belong to myself. It's funny how we give up space inch by inch. Until one day we wake up and realize we're living in a corner of our own life. This wasn't about taking the house back. It was about taking me back. 3 days later, the motion light on the porch flicked on. I was in the back room, crocheting. Hadn't touched yarn in years, but the rhythm kept my hands busy while my heart learned how to settle. I didn't move when I heard the car, didn't flinch when I heard the knock. Just sat there, let it play out like I'd already rehearsed it in my head. Kevin's voice came through the door, low, hesitant. "Mom? It's me. Something's wrong with the lock." I let the silence stretch. He knocked again. "Can we talk?" Another pause. Then the car door opened again. Children's voices this time. Lisa's voice, loud, clipped. "She changed the locks. Are you kidding me?" I stood slowly, walked to the kitchen window and peeked through the curtain. Lisa was pacing. Kevin was already on the phone. I watched my phone light up across the room. I didn't answer. They stayed on the porch for 20 minutes. The kids got restless. Lisa got louder. Kevin kept trying different doors. Garage, side entrance, back gate. None of them worked. They weren't meant to. Eventually they left. No goodbye, no apology. Just taillights disappearing the same way they had 3 days before. But this time, I wasn't the one being left behind. That night, the house felt still. Not silent like before, but full. Full of decision, full of space I'd finally made mine again. The next morning, I walked past the couch and noticed something under the cushion, wedged deep. Aiden's phone. I picked it up, expecting a missed call or two. Instead, there was a voice memo, titled, "For Grandma." I hesitated, then tapped play. His voice was soft, a little shaky. "Hi, Grandma. I don't know if you'll hear this, but I wanted you to come. I asked. Mom said no. Dad didn't say anything. I don't know why. I miss you. You always make me pancakes when Mom forgets. You come to my games. I don't get why you had to stay." There was a pause, breathing, a sniffle. "I wish you were coming with us." Click. I sat there holding that phone like it weighed more than I could carry. That small voice cracked something in me I thought had already hardened. He didn't say much, but he said enough. I didn't call, didn't respond. I wrote a note instead. "I heard your message. I love you. You didn't do anything wrong. I'll always be here when you need me. Love, Grandma." I taped it to the back of the phone, sealed it in an envelope, and mailed it to the motel they'd left on the voicemail. No name on the return address, just my handwriting, steady and clear. That night, I stood in the hallway holding an old family photo, the last one before Lisa came into the picture. Just me and the boys, standing in front of this house, smiling like we didn't know what time would do. I swapped it with the newer photo on the wall, the one where I looked like a guest. Let them notice. Let them feel what happens when the foundation they ignored starts speaking back. A week passed. Kevin came back. Alone. No bags, no excuses. Just a plain man in a tired sweatshirt who looked like he hadn't slept right in a while. He held something in his hands, an old photo album. Said he found it in the garage under a bin labeled Summer Decor. I looked through it, he said. I remembered things I forgot, things I tried not to think about. He paused. I told Lisa I wouldn't go through with the title change. She left, took the kids to her sister's, said she was done. He looked at me. I'm not here to stay. I know I don't get that, but I wanted to say, you were never the problem. I was just too small to admit it. I nodded but said nothing. He handed me the album and left. Weeks later, Aiden came by with Kevin, just for the afternoon. He brought a small, messy card that said, Best Grandma Ever. We sat on the porch painting the old garden gnome Lisa had once called Tacky. Eli used too much blue. I didn't correct him. Kevin helped with the dishes that evening. Didn't say much, but moved gently, like someone learning how to walk across a floor he used to stomp over. Before they left, Kevin paused at the kitchen door. He looked up at the new sign I'd hung over the doorway. This house remembers. He didn't ask what it meant. He didn't need to. That night, I sat in my husband's old chair with a cup of tea, staring at the candle flickering on the table. The house didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt earned. Not quiet from loss, but quiet from peace. I hadn't reclaimed it through rage. I hadn't demanded recognition. I just stayed. Stayed long enough for the truth to do the talking. Have you ever quietly taken back something that once felt lost without ever raising your voice? If you've been through a silent kind of victory, I'd love to hear it. Drop a comment if you've ever felt invisible and found your way back. Someone out there needs your story too.